Okay, so welcome to this webinar called Home Buying Tactics, 5 Steps to Get Your Purchase Offer Accepted Without Being Outbid by 10 or More Buyers. My name is Ryan Hartman with Inside Real Estate, and I have Rob Lazar here. He is the broker owner of RE/MAX Select and a few other RE/MAX brands as well, right, Rob, up there in New Jersey and Florida?
That's correct. Great brand to be with.
Great.
So I'm
And
excited.
cool. Yeah. And just real quick, you want to tell us a little bit about your company, where you're located, maybe how long you've been in the business, things of that nature?
So I've been in the real estate business since 1990, and I've been a franchise owner at RE/MAX since 96. We operate 15 offices, one in South Florida, and the rest of them are all in Central and North Jersey. And, we're in the business of helping people get in and out of properties in the most efficient and effective way.
Excellent. So we won't have a lot of fluff here. We're going to jump right into the first slide. Before I do that, I'll just mention to everybody watching live again that this is going to be recorded, so we'll get you to replay after. If you have any questions, just hit the chat widget and we'll try to get to those questions either in real time or we'll reserve them for the end if appropriate. So Rob, we'll jump right in here and we'll talk about these 5 steps. But before we get into the steps, I think we should probably talk about the situation. It seems like all over the country, it's a seller's market and there are multiple offers on a lot of properties. That's the case up there in Jersey.
That is correct.
And
So,
go ahead.
I mean, it's really a basic fundamental principle. It's a supply and demand. And, right now we're seeing, the migration of a generation due to both economic and the pandemic conditions. So it really is, it's an interesting dynamic that we're dealing with. So,
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah. And in your case, you probably have a lot of people, just from what I've heard, maybe leaving the city, New York City, some urban areas. Is that putting kind of pressure on your marketplace or?
Yeah, so if people are migrating out of a highly dense city like New York City or even some of the cities inside Jersey and moving west to suburb lifestyles, you know, we can't build homes to accommodate, tens or hundreds of thousands of new people. So it becomes a supply and demand issue. And, we really encourage our buyers in this market to be laser focused on exactly what they want. And
Gotcha.
I see, like on the slide here, we have some obvious things like interest rates are low, and if the market's so hot, why are interest rates low? I mean, interest rates are intentionally low to accommodate some of the economic struggle that's going on in the world around us. There's more demand than supply is basically a function of people realigning, people who are in more spaced areas, larger lots. If you're kind of confined to your home a lot more, you want a house that's more comfortable for you to be living kind of in that property without having to rely upon the other amenities. That is a recipe for a seller's market. So if you are a property owner, and like many of us in the New Jersey market, a lot of people are moving from Central and North Jersey to South Jersey, the coast, where you get a little bit more room, or a lot of people are moving down to the Sunshine Belt. And that's really how we're opening up inventory in New Jersey to make it possible for more buyers to recognize that dream. This combination is presenting, almost every property that we're coming across is receiving multiple offers. And Brian, I can't tell you, it's very similar to the market you're in Florida, where it's very, unnerving for a lot of buyers to say, hey, we have to make an offer the first day we see a property because it's going to be gone on day 2 or 3. So the goal of this meeting is to give you the education so that you can make those decisions in a split second and to understand the market and to decide if right now is the time for you to be a participant, and if now is the time for you to wait until things change. So we basically want to give you that education so you can make the decision from perfect knowledge.
So starting with step 1, it is to understand the market you're in. Just to recap, interest rates are super low. macroeconomic conditions. There's more demand than supply. In certain markets, people are moving from urban areas into other areas. It's a seller's market, and there's a good chance if you're heading out there right now, the house you look at today is going to have 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 offers tomorrow.
Right. And I think understanding the market, Ryan, is even more so than understanding, hey, here's the spot price for a house today, but it's looking at what are the forward thinking projections for prices. And I encourage the consumers to do their research on not only where's the price today, but you could look on sources. A really low level source could be like Zillow, will tell you where they predict the market to be in a year. So if you're looking at a community where Zillow is predicting 13% or 8% appreciation over the next year, obviously the longer that you wait to buy, the more disadvantaged you are from a price structure. So if you get your professional average, you get from your professional like days on market, list to sale price, and do your homework to see if this is something that's going to be in an appreciating or at least an anticipated appreciating market.
So your agents are trained to have that data in their little submarkets where they are.
Yeah, it's great you mentioned that, because real estate is super local. And if you look at New Jersey, parts of New Jersey are seeing declining markets where there's high density. If you're in Jersey City or Hoboken, and you want to buy, you can really get a deal there. If you're looking to sell, you really need to make your house attractive. You go to suburban areas, Morristown, Montclair, you're going to see high demand for those properties, high competition.
Got it. So understand the market you're in. That's going to be step one. Kind of know what you're getting into market wise. Step two, get specific on what you really want. So you want to talk a little bit about this, Rob?
Yeah. So step two is the market environment doesn't accommodate indecisive buyers now. Okay. And what I mean by that is, before, we would meet with clients, they'd look at 7 properties and decide, which one they want, and they'd have a week to think about it. Now we need to do the thinking in advance. We need to know what we're willing to accept, what we are not willing to accept. And I like to say, have a list of 3 to 5 must-haves and be willing to compromise on almost everything else. Because if you get your must-haves, maybe you can make the house expand by doing a little renovation, upgrading something. The kitchen's not perfect. Well, you can remedy that. But if you're living in a 1,600 square foot condo with 5 kids, you have a problem, and we need to look at what's the solution to that problem. So doing that in advance is so critical, Ryan, to the process.
Great. So some other things to consider up on the screen here.
So you have to look at some really key things that maybe when you're emotionally looking at houses, you're like, wow, that house looks really nice, especially when you're looking at it online. A lot of the most important things kind of lie below the surface. Like, what's the community like? Is this going to be a place that is consistent with your lifestyle? Okay. If you have children that use public schools, or if they're in private schools, what's the proximity to the schools, and are those schools what you're looking for? Transportation, shopping, density, all these things are things that you need to consider with your professional. Yeah. Another thing that, Ryan, surprisingly, even lenders often will just say, hey, you're pre-qualified for 400,000, 600,000. But what influences that is, at least from a lending standpoint, is it a single family, or is it a condo or townhouse where you have a fixed maintenance fee? What are the property taxes?
Yeah. Because
with interest rates being so low, property taxes play a much more significant role or impact in what your total housing payment is than it ever did before. Maintenance, I've seen people, have to really struggle because they bought a house that needs a lot of maintenance. Okay, needs a lot of upkeep or upgrade. That's gonna cost you maybe a vacation. if you're
Yeah.
spending all your money upgrading the house. These are things that we counsel our home buyers to think about in advance. And, if a house is, if it's got poor insulation, or if it's got electric heat, or some of the things that are not ideal, especially in this environment, that cost of utilities or just maintaining it's going to be a undue burden versus a home that's been upgraded with energy efficient windows and LED lighting.
Yep.
Other things that you need to think about, the characteristics of the homes. I think everybody says, hey, I want a 3, 4, 5 bedroom home with 2.5, 3 baths and an open floor plan. And I don't want to do any work. Well, you probably aren't going to get all of that in most of your budgets. So you have to be willing to figure out what's most important to you. What can you compromise on, and potentially, maybe what can you put an addition on later to open up the floor plan. So these are things that a experienced agent will give you advice upon, and then you need to make that ultimate decision.
Yeah, they can help you visualize those sorts of things from having seen so much inventory. An agent will often see a two, but some listed as a 2-bedroom, and suddenly they see it as a 3 with a little bit of tweaking, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then, I think first and foremost, almost everybody on this webinar is looking at the home, I believe, to be a place to live. It's your roots. It's where you spend most of your time, but it's also an investment, right? So, if buying in one town versus another town is going to impact, where your house is worth 5 years from now, I think that's something that has to be weighed in when you make those decisions. What's the price trend for where you're going? Nobody has a crystal ball, but there are, indications. For example, some parts of New Jersey, there are plans to make a direct line to Manhattan. And there are statistics where once that direct train line goes in, home values go up between 12 and 18% in the first year. And that's above and beyond what the normal appreciation would be, because there's demand for not having to change over in, Secaucus or Newark. And that adds to your 15, 20 minutes to each way of your commute. Other things that you need to know, and when somebody's buying, often your first or your second house is not your forever house.
Yeah.
So, if you have, young children and you want to have a bigger property when they get to a certain age, or you have children in high school, and once they get out of high school, you're going to downsize. We need to look at what that time horizon is so that we make the right choice.
Yeah, I see a lot of people. I did this myself in my early 20s. My wife and I bought a house that was way bigger because we anticipated having kids. Turned out we didn't like the house or the area, and we ended up moving, and we never needed a house that big. So you got to think it through sometimes and do what's right for the time you're at, right?
Yep. I mean, I think the average is probably about 8 years now that people are in a home. And I know with this whole pandemic, migration is probably temporarily shorter, but I believe it's going to go back to that norm as soon as everybody gets the vaccine in their arm.
Yeah.
So
is it fair to say you don't necessarily, especially for the first time home buyers listening, you don't necessarily need your dream home right away? There are other things to consider, such as the investment value and your current life situation.
And the other good thing about it, Ryan, is when you get into your first home, right? If property values go up, when you make a trade up, you're trading inflated dollars for your new home.
Yeah.
Okay, so that really makes the pain a little bit less. And conversely, if the house prices happen to go down, when you buy another property, you're going back into the same market.
Right. And a lot of times for a lot of people, you have more income in 5-10 years than you have now, just the path of your career or what have you.
Yep.
So step 3. So now we're gonna get into the nitty gritty. That was sort of the getting ready stuff, right? The setup, but practical nuts and bolts. You're like, yes, I'm gonna buy a house. I'm ready to start searching now. This is probably where, especially in multi-offer situations, where people can really do themselves a disservice, and that is they don't get pre-approved for a mortgage. And you recommended two pre-approval letters. So interested to hear your take on that.
So the interesting thing is, a lot of first-time buyers, which, we love to work with, are going with a lower down payment, or you might be going with an FHA or a VA loan program. And we'll have some webinars in this series, Ryan, to kind of go over the different types of loan products. But as a home buyer, if you're putting less money down, a seller has a perception that you might be less qualified to buy. Like if something happens, you might not be able to perform. So what we often do is if somebody is putting down a minimum down payment, we might present a offer with 2 pre-qualification or pre-approval letters. And I actually have fun with this, because as I'm talking to another agent and they say, hey, your offer number 17, right? I'll be like, you know what, Ryan, my clients, if we put this deal together, I can guarantee that we're going to perform. We put in our offer that we're not going to, nitpick on cosmetic issues. And, just to demonstrate, that they're not only approved as an FHA buyer, but they also have a conventional loan approval. And I took the liberty of including both letters for you, Ryan. So those things matter, okay? And the quality of your communication has an influence on the outcome of the decision. Because as a 30-year participant in this market, I see newer real estate agents or less experienced ones will just email me an offer on a property without having a discussion. And almost without exception, those offers are overlooked because it doesn't tell a story. It's not presented professionally. So 2 pre-approval letters. I always suggest everybody get pre-approved before you get started, because what you can qualify for and what you decide to buy needs to be your decision. Not everybody buys at the extreme of what they can afford.
Yeah.
And especially now, if any of us are self-employed, okay, or you do some side hustles, the way you file your tax return can influence how much you can afford. So, sometimes we have people say, hey, you know what, I'm going to actually declare more of that income this year so that I can afford a bigger house. And, that tax deadline's coming up. So you have a great opportunity in this environment.
A bullet point we don't have on here too. There's a lot of importance with how the pre-approval letter looks and is presented, right? It needs to look legit, especially when you have 10 other offers you're competing with. And I know you work with a handful of lenders who you've vetted and done deals with before, and that pre-approval letter is gonna resonate with the listing agent, right?
Yeah, like, so if you work with some companies with national recognition or local recognition, people recognize that these loans are going to close. And sometimes, believe it or not, like a pre-approval from a national company like a Wells Fargo might seem like it's a strong pre-approval, or a Bank of America, but they are so busy that they often miss the closing deadlines. They are so institutional that if something doesn't fit into the 4 corners of the box, they're declining a loan.
That's another good reason to have 2 too, because you've already done the vetting process with 2 lenders. And if one of their underwriters is a little more picky than the other, you've kind of got a backup already. You've done some of the work.
Yep. I like to say, Ryan, you let us do the worrying, because, as long as we have a great communication and you're transparent with your situation, we will tell you exactly what your options are so that you can make the best decision, because it's all about you as the buyer.
Great. And Rob, we have a link we'll give at the end in a few minutes to where people can go and start the pre-approval process right away if they want to. Right.
Fantastic.
Yep. So step 4, so getting more into the nitty gritty, when it's time to negotiate, you're going to want to have a negotiation strategy. So what's that strategy, Rob?
So first of all, Ryan, how many agents have discussed with you having a negotiation strategy? This is the most neglected piece of the puzzle on the planet. Okay. Everybody just goes, you find the house, and then we get into this big scurry. There's 17 offers on it. We have no strategy. We have no vision. We have no plan. Okay. I'm just going to tell you, we just put a transaction together with a gentleman. His name was Ricardo. He was outbid 11 times. Okay. And he came to us and said, this is my last hope. I'm going to give up. And when he found the property, He wanted to bid more than he ultimately paid. And, he's like, house is 425, we lost our last one bidding 50,000 more, Ryan. We want to bid 476, 51,000 more. Our lender said we can afford it. And I said, that's not how we work here, because we have a plan. So I reached out to the other broker. We had a conversation and we had a clear communication, and I felt him out to where the number needed to be. And I actually saved this client $25,000. He paid 25 less than he was willing to pay because we had a strategy. I had a conversation with the other agent. I was like, Ryan, if we were to role play here, Ryan, I'd be like, Ryan, I have a really super qualified client. He's so qualified, he has 2 pre-approvals. As a matter of fact, he's thinking of making an offer in this property about 450, maybe 451. Is it worth writing up?
Yeah.
And this way I got the vibe back from that agent, whether or not we would be competitive there. And then I talked to him about, hey, we can close quickly. We're going to have limited inspection provisions. We're actually prepared to proceed forward if the property appraises up to 15,000 below the asking price.
That's a big one.
Listen to this. This is something, if you're watching on the webinar, you should write this down, because you need to make a decision before it gets asked to you. Price 425, we're bidding 451. And we said that we would be willing to continue with this transaction as long as it appraised for 436. 15,000 of that risk is on us. Now that matters, because that appraisal could come in low and the whole deal could fall apart. Then they have to go back and start from square one. And my client, okay, he'd have to go and find a place to live, because he's given notice on his lease.
Yeah.
So those are things that matter. If a seller receives multiple offers above asking, your offer might be disregarded if it's not realistic. Okay. So the concept of, hey, let me try to make an offer of 390 on this 4.25 property and see if they'll counter. I'm like waiting like this. Where's that callback? It ain't coming, right?
Yeah.
They're not even acknowledging that offer, Ryan.
Because the listing agent gets a stack of 10 offers. They sort through them real quick and they just throw 7 away because they're not even close. And then they focus in on the 3, right? And then they're going to focus even more on the one where Rob has already called them. And they've already kind of had a conversation. So that makes a lot of sense. Yep.
And I love all my peers in the real estate community, but if there's like a boutique office in a town 7 towns away, and they're presenting an offer here where I'm at right now in Westfield, and I don't recognize that office, that buyer might be great, but I don't recognize that brand. If it's from, Joe's real estate services, right? I mean, like, I have to give you the advice as a seller, Ryan, of what transaction has the best terms for you as a seller. And what are the terms? The terms are not only the price. If they pay you 50,000 more, but they can't close, that's nothing. If they pay you 50,000 more, then they want to negotiate 75,000 on home inspection items. That's not a really good deal, is it?
Right. Or if you know the agent's a little flaky on the other side of the deal, right? There's a lot that plays into that.
So people have, I'll look at what people's production is, and if somebody doesn't have a lot of production, the chances are they don't know how to bring a deal to the closing. So if you're working with somebody like that, you're going to be judged by the crowd that you're with, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So just food for thought when you're
that plays into the last bullet: hire an experienced expert negotiator. We're not trying to say that a new agent can't do a great job, but these are things to consider, right?
Well, Ryan, you conveniently omitted the understanding how money works piece of this.
Okay. Go for it.
And the understanding how money works piece of this is, when you're buying a house, and I like to talk to my clients and my agents about this, Ryan. Have you ever seen $675,000 in cash on a table?
No.
Does that have any, how high would the $100 bill stack? And if it was 20s, how high would it be? This means this is a meaningless number that we put it at. And sometimes I have clients that get tied up in the emotion of it, right? And it's just I have to feel good by feeling I got a good deal. And if somebody says this house is worth 670, it's not worth 675, I'm walking away from it, right? If that's the conversation I'm having, to be honest with you, Ryan, I'd be going to you, Ryan, if it's worth 670, not 675, we ought to withdraw that offer because it's really not the house for you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you're taking an emotional play onto a lifestyle business decision.
And what does $5,000 over 30 years translate into right now?
With the low interest rates that we have right now, it's probably like $18 a month.
Right.
Okay, it's like 62 cents a day. So, just make one sacrifice a month and you're covered. So those are some of the things that I find to be frustrating. And then in my many, many years of experience, I find that people are kicking themselves because they didn't do that. And my job is not to push you to make a decision to do it or not. My job is to educate and empower you to make that decision that's right for you and your family. And I think a lot of people don't put that thought into it. It's this rush. We go out there, we got to put an offer in today because there's 11 offers. Well, if you're watching the webinar, you should write down, understand how money works. Okay, that is so important. Now we can move to the next one there, Ryan.
Great. Oh, my favorite. So be careful about conditions and contingencies. And I'll just set this up, Rob, by saying, for people who don't know, most real estate contracts, the standard forms, are probably in most states 10 to 20 or so pages. And many of those pages are kind of fine print, and they have these conditions and contingencies that kind of get added on to the other terms, such as price and closing date.
So what I like to do, and what most of our agents do, Ryan, is we provide you with a copy of the contract so that you can review it in advance. It's a standardized contract that's used by virtually everybody. When your attorney gets it and the seller's attorney gets it, they're like, this is what we know, right?
Right.
And then they make some proposed changes to protect your interest. The selling side will say, I accept or decline, and the transaction comes together. Being careful about the contingencies, one of the things that I would say to lower the stress level and improve the outcome is to make sure that you surround yourself by not just a great agent, but a great team. Because we all have an uncle that's an attorney in another state that does something other than real estate that, I'm going to use my cousin Vinny. I'm going to use my uncle. Bad choice. Okay. I have attorneys that buy and they use a local real estate agent or local real estate attorney because they know that that's going to facilitate the process going together. In, Monmouth County versus Bergen County, the traditions are different. Okay. So if you have an out of area attorney, that sometimes also jeopardizes the transaction. Here's a great one, Ryan, that I just want to share with you. We had a closing that happened right after Thanksgiving, and the mortgage commitment was coming due. Everything was crazy with the pandemic, and like, we got to rush. We got to get this one through. We got to get this one through. The closing date is this, right? And I called the listing. You got to listen. I called the listing agent and said, look, I know we put down that we're going to close in 5 weeks, but it's a little bit stressful. What's your seller's opinion? And Ryan, Mary goes to me and says, Rob, I'm so glad you called because my sellers would like to close in January because it's stressing them out. They're having a hard time finding a mover. So we were both creating this stress to try to close sooner, because don't you think, Ryan, most agents are like, hey, we do a quick closing, quick closing, right? But sometimes people don't want a quick closing.
Yeah. So
that communication there was just like a lifesaver, because I had these poor buyers that were stressed out. My agent was stressed out. The lender was like trying to jump the line, and everybody else wanted to push it back. So shortened time frames are generally good, but you have to communicate. Go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, and would you say, as a buyer's agent, would you say that one of the big conditions to a seller is that closing date, and it might be a good idea to come in and be flexible on your closing date and let the seller almost choose that. If you're competing with other offers, it's going to be a big factor.
Yep.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I mean, the seller is a buyer in most cases, and they're having the same challenges that you're having finding a property. So having flexibility in the closing date, if you can afford to do that, will help get a lower offer accepted because the conditions are better. Everybody always assumes it's all about money, but money is a piece of the decision-making process.
So we skipped around on the bullets a little. I kind of did that. I went to number 4, not even thinking about it. But the shortened timeframes on everything, in particular, the home inspection, the financing clause, the home inspection in particular is probably a big one, right? Because that's a big unknown for the seller, whether or not you're going to have anything come back on you.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Expectations are great. So I would talk to you about what are the expectations for that home inspection, okay? And sometimes buyers take that home inspection and say, hey, I want a perfect house. I want a brand new house. I want everything to be perfect. Well, where we are, there's limited new construction because everything's pretty much built. So you're buying a home of a certain age, and it's going to be that condition that comes with a property of that age. You're really only entitled to things that are currently not working. So like if the roof is old, near the end of its expected life, but it's not leaking, the seller is generally under no obligation to do anything about that. And you'll see home inspectors put things like, the water heater is 17 years old. It's only expected to last 10, so it's beyond the expected life of the water heater. Well, if you're going into home ownership, these are things you have to deal with. There are solutions for doing this, like you can get a home warranty, and you can continue that home warranty if you want to avoid having unforeseen expenses. But the solution of telling the seller, I want you to put a new water heater in that's not broken, usually doesn't work.
Especially in this environment.
Correct. But saying that, hey, I'll have my mortgage commitment done in 2 weeks, that shortened time frame is very attractive to a seller, because then they know that they can move forward with buying their next house. Okay. I'll have my inspections done in 5 days, and we'll have the report back to you in 7 business days. That's helpful to a seller. Waiver limit conditions and contingencies. So, hey, I'm limiting my home inspection to environmental, if there's mold or oil in the ground, structural, if there's termite damage, mechanical, if there's a standard Federal Pacific electric panel that's uninsurable because they're prone to fire. Like those things are things that are real tangible problems. But a scratch in the floor from the piano, not so much. Even a crack in a window that you could see, oftentimes you're accepting it as is.
And these are all things that contribute to convincing the seller that there's a high likelihood this is going to close, and that they're not going to get a week or 2 in, and then a home inspection is going to happen, and there's going to be a list of 30 demands. You come in just showing them that right away by limiting things.
So Ryan, if you're buying a house for $300,000, you're putting 20% down. You're pretty good with math. How much money is that?
It's $60,000. Yep.
So you're putting $60,000 down. So if I want to try to help you get that offer accepted and get the best possible price, what I may counsel you to do is to put that money up front as your initial deposit, because you're going to need it anyway to show the seller that you're serious. Okay, so that's not costing you anything. It's showing the seller that you're serious, and you might get the house where you otherwise might not, and you might be able to get it at a better price than you otherwise might not. Okay, we talked
60,
about
60 looks a lot more convincing than 5 or 10.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
It shows that you're serious, right?
Yeah.
Be convenient. Let the seller choose the closing dates, and the bottom one there is super critical. If you're from New Jersey, Ryan, we have this thing called an attorney review period. And what the attorney review period is, if I submit an offer on behalf of my client to you to present to your seller, you'd come back to me and say, hey, Rob, we're going to take it. Okay. At that point, we both send it to our attorneys. And by law in the contract, there's a 3-day review period. Okay. And I think this is a little bit outdated from when things used to be mailed back and forth or even faxed. Now with
Yeah.
electronic communications and a standardized agreement, it doesn't need to be that long. So what we do is we say, look, today is Thursday. We want to get out of attorney review tomorrow. So I want to hire an attorney that's going to be proactive, get that letter out in a matter of 30 minutes instead of a day. And it's going to follow up with the other side to make sure we can get out. Because you know what happens on the weekends, Ryan?
No.
More homeowners come to look at the house. And if they get a better offer, guess what they do? They say, sorry, Ryan, we got a better offer. We're not accepting your offer. Or the heartbreaker of heartbreakers is, hey, Ryan, we're still willing, we still love you. We're still going to go with you, but you have to pay me 20,000 more, or we're taking that other person over there.
Yeah.
After the anxiety of getting a house, and you might have been celebrating on Friday night, but if you're not out of attorney review, you might be crying on Monday.
So the seller has the right, as unethical as it might sound, the seller has a right to kind of go back on the deal because of attorney review.
But it's not in New Jersey. It's not even unethical.
Yeah.
If you have the right professional, Ryan, they explain to you the process.
Yeah. Not unethical.
Okay.
It sounds unfair. you kind of made a deal, but it's just the way it is. It's the law.
And sometimes buyers have buyer's remorse, right? So as a buyer, you can change until attorney review is concluded as well. It goes for both ends. And when it's a seller's market, in order to protect the interest of the buyer, you want to have professionals that get you out as soon as possible if that's the house that you want. That's the point I'm making.
Yep.
So anyway, this is all great stuff that we're talking about here, and I hope you're taking some notes here, because it could save you a boatload of money, or it could be the differentiating factor that means you're getting into the house that you want versus looking at somebody else moving into your home.
Yep. And for everybody listening, feel free to ask questions, and we will get you the replay and the slides. We know we're getting into some of the nitty gritty, but each of these finer points could mean the difference between your offer getting accepted or not. So let's go to step 5. This is kind of the big one. We've kind of been hinting at this, but this really does make a difference. There are so many different levels of experience and different types of agents out there. And so step number 5 is going to be hire the right agent. Rob, do you want to talk about kind of how do you know if you're hiring the right agent? I'm not even sure.
So, the ultimate way that you know is that you get the result that you want, right? So then we're going to peel back the process and take a look under the hood. And how do you get that? How do you get to that process? And, the right agent's an expert in the market, and an expert in the market is going to prepare you for what you're going to see, right? So if you're looking to buy a house like in Bloomfield, we just had a listing that went with 37 offers. So all those agents bringing buyers need to let their buyer know this is what's likely to happen. We need to be prepared for entering this market. Or sometimes, Ryan, I say, look, maybe, this is not the market. This is not the time for you to enter the market if you don't have the stomach for it, or you don't understand the market to feel comfortable. Second is to have, what I call advanced negotiating skills. Okay. You don't want to hire somebody on their second day that could cost you 5 or 10%, right? I can't change the conditions in the market, but I can influence what the price that you're paying or what the price that you get as a seller are by the way that I negotiate. By way of example, when I was working with a seller in Rumson, we had actually, had some discussions. The gentleman and his wife wanted to get 2.2 million for this beautiful home, and their thought was, hey, let me ask 2.5. And I was like, look, we got to price it. We got to price it close to where you want, and we need at least 2 people to bid the property up. So we got a full price offer in about 8 days. and we're in attorney review, and another offer comes in. I say, hey, Ryan, we're already in attorney review. We have a pretty good offer. Well, that person bids $250,000 more. Okay. So, but if we were priced a little bit higher, we wouldn't get that offer. So the converse is also true for buyers. You need to know that you have somebody who can tell you whether this price is realistic, this price is inflated, or this price is artificially low to build up demand. And here's where it's likely to land based upon the comps. A good agent will call the other agent and get as much intel as they can before you make your offer. Okay, that's about building rapport and trust as much as getting information about, hey, where are you really on activity on this property, right? A quality agent will always be an advocate for your position, okay? And will communicate and set proper expectations. And I'm gonna talk to you a little bit, because some of the audience might also be sellers as well as buyers. And one of the biggest killers of transactions, and to a lesser extent, but still in this market, is negotiating home inspection issues, Ryan. And if somebody comes and says, I saw evidence of water damage here, you have a little crack on the foundation in the basement, you have, a list of 7 or 8 things, right? You can argue about it, or a lot of lazy people say, hey, let's just throw them $15,000 or, whatever. Almost every instance, I just suggest that we remedy the problem, and it usually costs about 1/3 of what the buyer is looking to extract from the transaction. That's what expert negotiators do. They give you the different pathways to a successful outcome.
Gotcha. So let's see. Do we have another slide? Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about Remax. I happen to be, Rob, way back in the day, I was at Remax, so I know a little bit about it. But is it fair to say that Remax agents tend to be a little bit slanted toward the more experienced side of things? Is that still true?
So the brand
Yeah.
is the brand is built upon experienced agents who are running it as a business. And nothing against new people. Everybody has to start somewhere. But our brand believes that surrounding yourself by other quality people, all ships rise with the tide. You become the average of who you associate with. If there's a company that hires part-timers, and non-committed people, it's just not really good for the brand. And it dilutes the value of when you say, hey, I'm at Remax making an offer on your listing. That's one perfect example of it. And there are Remaxes that don't have, not every agent at Remax is perfect, and other brands have great agents. I don't want to do it that way, but
Yeah.
it's kind of like playing the odds,
Right. But your company's been around a while. I'm trying to make the case for anybody watching that you're probably in good hands if you work with one of Rob's agents. They've got Rob, they've got access to him. You've trained a lot of your agents, right? And you have a lot of other professionals like you there.
Yeah, and we are such a collaborative group that our agents know that they have the resource to come to one of our 15 managers and our experts that can help them, as well as myself. I still roll the sleeves up and get involved.
Great. So again, guys, if you have any questions at all, just chat them in. If you're watching the replay later, you can always get in touch with Rob's office. Here are some next steps. Obviously, we have the bullets in order here. You can reach out to your Remax Select, Remax Signature Homes, or Remax Property Center agent for a consult. That step where you get pre-approved for a mortgage is definitely a must do almost even before you start searching on the internet for houses. I know you're going to do it the other way, but go to mortgageapplicationlink.com. That's one of Rob's trusted partners, right? One of your mortgage partners.
Yep.
Go to that link. You can start the application process. They'll get back in touch with you. And Rob, you mentioned you want to talk a little bit about the home buyer closing cost credit that's available there.
Yeah. So if you're a buyer in New Jersey, there are some income limitations to it, but most of our buyers are eligible through our preferred pre-screen lender to get a $10,000 closing cost grant. Now, a grant is kind of a betweener between a loan and a gift, and it becomes a gift once you've been in the property for 5 years. So if you buy it and you flip it in 6 months, it winds up having to be repaid. But if it's something that's going to be your primary residence, you're going to stay there for a while, it winds up becoming a waivable gift. So it's like a $10,000 in your pocket.
Great. So use that link, mortgageapplicationlink.com, and then definitely ask the lender who calls back about that home buyer closing cost credit. And then Rob, we've got you set up here. If somebody texts START to that number, they'll get a quick reply back from one of your agents or somebody at your company. Is that right?
That is correct.
Yeah. So if you just want to start talking about a qualified agent, you can tell them your criteria. You can ask any questions you might have that you didn't want to get answered here live with us in a group setting. You can get a one-on-one conversation with a qualified agent. And then finally, We Sell New Jersey is your main website, right?
Yep.
WeSellNewJersey.com. You can go there, browse every house available in the MLS. I'll mention, a lot of people don't know this, but if you go to Zillow, you're not always getting every listing, right? Is that kind of safe to say?
That is safe to say.
It's not always totally up to date. We Sell New Jersey is going to have .com is going to have a complete current picture of what's on the market, within a few hours for the most part. So definitely go there and start your property search there after you start the mortgage pre-approval process.
So I saw some questions coming up. Do you want to just check on those?
Yeah, let's do that
before we wrap it up.
Yeah. So just a few. There was one here. What do you suggest I do if I feel that my agent isn't pushing hard enough or isn't aligned with isn't aligned with me or doesn't want to push harder in a bidding war? What do you do if your agent just isn't a bulldog, Rob?
I think what you need, I think that's kind of a little bit too late, or you need to basically reassess and try to interview somebody who you feel comfortable with. Style matters, right? You need to feel like you can communicate with somebody. And, it's really challenging. And sometimes, if I was telling you, Ryan, right now in Bloomfield, this house is going to get multiple offers. I believe there's already 17 now. You feel like you're getting undue pressure, right? And if you have that feeling that you're getting pressured, it's probably not the right relationship. And I can't put it any more succinctly that you need to know that I stand right next to you. I am your advocate for buying a house. I am not somebody looking to, push you up to the highest price and get you in a house that you're not satisfied with. That's easy to do.
And on that specific question for the person who asked it, once you're kind of in the swing of things with that agent for that transaction, you're kind of with them, Rob. As you said, it's kind of too late in that particular interaction. But if you don't get that house, depending on the terms of any buyer agency agreements, then you can move on to another agent. Is that right, Rob?
Yep. And the majority of our market does not utilize buyer agency. I'm not opposed to it, but you have to feel comfortable with your agent. Like you wouldn't want to go to a medical doctor that you didn't feel comfortable with, right? You wouldn't want to take your car to a mechanic that you're not sure if the brakes are going to work. So you want to make sure that you're comfortable with the person you're working with. Don't just walk into an open house and align yourself and your financial future to somebody who you haven't vetted out. Yeah. I love it when people ask me questions about, experience and how would I handle something.
Yeah. Can I ask you, we don't have any more questions, but just a little extra bit here, because I can imagine people who are in the market now are seeing this kind of bubble, this parabolic shape with the prices, right? And it seems like you're pretty knowledgeable on macroeconomic conditions. Where do you think, I'm not asking you to predict, but should somebody feel pressured to buy now because in 6 to 12 months, the price is going to be that much higher? Or is it safe to wait?
So you're going to like my answer to this because it's different from most, but if you're buying stocks, that's how you decide. But if you need a place to live and you're not happy with where you're at, my suggestion is, make that the underlying decision. And the secondary piece is, well, where's the market going to go? If I was to say, wait 6 months to buy, you'll get a better deal, I would feel extremely uncomfortable saying that. Plus, I really think that with the new macro economic environment, interest rates are going to be going higher. Right. So even if the prices were to go down a little bit, the rates go higher, you're really not winning. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, yeah, and it becomes a lot about just the monthly payment. You're going to lock in a fixed mortgage rate. Does it work for you right now? And do you plan to stay? You should be planning to stay at least 2 to 5 years, right? I mean, there should be a long-term view here in most cases.
I mean, we actually have serial buyers that like to buy and then sell every 2 years and make a profit tax-free. I literally have a handful of clients that do that. What's better than tax-free? I saw another question fly by. I didn't catch it about
Yeah.
buying a $600,000 home.
Yeah. So question is, if I'm pre-approved for 600K and I get outbid on the home by 20K, and I want the house and decide to bid 25K, can I cover that cost of my loan, or does that extra money have to be paid right away out of pocket?
So that's where, having a lender that understands how to position you with the right lender. And an example might be, the absolute lowest rate that we could find might be with Bank of America going through a wholesaler. And that will beat out going to the branch directly, and you'll close quicker. But if you wanted to say have a ratio that's 49% and you have good credit, we have 7 places that we can place that loan where you could probably afford to go up to 675. So you need lenders that are very knowledgeable and can give you the information that you need to hear. You don't want to have somebody that only has one option, right? So if you work for Bank of America, TD Bank, Wells Fargo, no offense to any of those, but they only have one option, right? If you go to a lender that can tell you, hey, here's different ways that you can address that situation. So
would you
really,
would you, along those lines, are you making a distinction between, say, a mortgage broker and a mortgage lender who, is that the distinction? A broker can line you up with all different products?
So most of our lending relationships and are bankers, but what they do, Ryan, is they'll close the loan in their own name, and then they ultimately know where that loan is getting transferred to. So if you bought a home before, don't be offended if you bought it with Green Tree Mortgage, and then before your second payment, you're making the payment to Chase.
Yep.
Because they had that decision when they closed the loan. A really savvy financial planner or mortgage representative will have access to 50 different lenders, and if Chase is lower today, they're going to save you that money. But if Chase says we're not going to go above the 38% ratio, but you can go to Columbia Savings Bank and they'll do a 49 if you have good credit, you have that, you're empowered to make that decision. So it might cost you an extra $6 a month, but you don't have to come up with 25 grand.
So to answer the question specifically, if your absolutely max of pre-approval is 600K and you can't get approved for anything more, I think what Rob's saying is you might be able to get approved for a little bit more, right? With those numbers, 600 and 625. But
so Ryan, I'm just going to tell you that I cringe when they say your max is 600, because when you come to talk to a lender, my lender, anybody else's, right? They're qualifying you based upon a hypothetical situation. And one of the things that they're factoring in is what are the property taxes going to be for that $600,000 home, right? And I'm going to tell you another way that I got somebody closed, which was to do a bare minimum. Like I had somebody at 49.9%, and like nobody would go beyond 50% because the property taxes were high. Well, what we did is we wound up getting an insurance policy with like a $5,000 deductible. It was the most budget policy that you could buy, but it was less than half the price. So that brought the ratio down. And then 2 months after they closed, they bought, the State Farm policy, which had better coverage. So you just need a team around you that gives you the options. Okay, you don't need somebody saying, "Hey, you're absolutely maxed out at 620."
Great. Good question, though. What are some tips you can share if I wanted to purchase a house that was in a hot market and I wanted to only put down 3, 5, or 10%? That's not too little in most cases, right?
So that's a great question, because I have an agent. Her name's Morgan. She was working with 2 police officers that were retired Army. They were in the Iraq War. A great couple, Ryan. and they lost 11 homes because there was no down payment on a VA loan. Now, what we did is we did a couple of things. We structured it where they put down, I think it was $12,000, which was what they were prepared to pay for closing costs. We put that down as earnest money or the deposit. And we had the pre-approval, both as a conventional and a VA. And Morgan, in the pandemic, went down and met with the agent in person. And check this out, Ryan, she printed up the contracts. They were signed electronically, but she printed them up. And she went there and she walked through it. It's like, hey, I'm honored to work with this couple. Here's what's going on. They're both military. Now they're law enforcement. We have 2 pre-approvals. It's as good as cash, right, Ryan? You get that? Ryan's like, yeah, I get it. It's like cash, right? So do you think that Ryan, that agent's going to be telling the seller, hey, they have 2 pre-approvals. It's like cash.
Yeah.
So that in-person presentation, Ryan, got offer number 12 accepted by two vets that were qualified for the VA mortgage, and they did take the VA mortgage when they got turned down by 11 because they had 0 down payment. So talk about having a winning strategy instead of a losing mindset. So we never deal from the bottom of the deck, Ryan, and that's why our reputation carries the day when we say it's going to close. But we present the case just like we're in a courtroom, fighting for our client to win a trial. That's winning the transaction.
Gotcha. So
I hope that was a good answer for you.
It was, and I'm convinced if I was moving to New Jersey, you guys would be my choice. So key takeaways here, I think for me was, if you are going to do something in this environment, your agent is very important. You're going to want somebody like Rob or like somebody on Rob's team. You definitely want to get your mortgage pre-approval straight. Know the numbers. You can't come in without a pre-approval up front. So to get those 2 things done, I'll do this again, mortgageapplicationlink.com, start the process now, and go ahead and text to get matched up with one of Rob's agents. When you text in, somebody will reply, and then you'll kind of have a dialogue and they'll help kind of figure out who to match with, right, Rob?
Exactly. And I'm just gonna conclude, if there's nothing else, saying that, an overwhelming majority, can't say all, overwhelming majority of the people that are attracted to our brand love what they're doing because we're passionate about real estate, as crazy as that sounds. And we like to dissect the process and show you the strategy on how you can get what you want. We can't make the price lower, but we can show you the strategy to get in there at the best possible price. And if you need a house, we'll help you get in. If you need to sell a house, we'll give you the right strategy as well.
Great. Thanks a lot, Rob. This was a lot of fun for me. Everybody watching, we'll get you out again, the replay. Go ahead and use the resources on the page there. And thanks a lot, Rob.
Hey, Ryan, it's a pleasure. Everybody, happy house hunting. And thanks for sharing some time with us on a Thursday night.
Great. We'll talk soon. We'll be back with more in this series. So keep an eye out on your email. And feel free, if you watch the replay, feel free to share this with your friends. See you later, Rob.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.